right, good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Mayer, and this is week 3 of a 4-part series on different trainings that I'm doing. First week, I actually covered my marketing strategy. It was on Thursday 2 weeks ago. I do encourage you to go back and watch that. My marketing strategy is pretty robust, both from a personal branding side and from a client service side as well. Last week, I covered my morning routine, what I call my offense and defensive strategy towards approaching my days, right? And today I'm going to be talking about that initial client phone call. So this is going to be the conversations you have with a prospective client. So I got to take my dog's toys away from her so she's not squeaking the whole time. And next week, I will be covering setting boundaries, proper boundaries and expectations with clients when you're actually in that initial meeting. One thing that you'll find about me is I'm very efficient with both my time and with my clients. I think it's kind of ironic. Someone years ago was trying to tell me that, it's kind of an industry standard. People say listings take a lot less time. Well, for me, it's actually the opposite because I prep my buyers for expectations, everything up front. It's more hands-on with sellers, but that's a conversation I'll have in with next week. What I'm going to be training today is just really the first 10 to 15 minutes phone call that I'm going to have with a prospective client when they come in. So whether this is someone who is being referred to me, someone that I know from the gym, someone that I met when I was out and about, if it's someone that came in through an online lead, I've used a bunch of different online lead generation systems over the course of the years. I currently use Commissions Inc. I just fired Lofty last month. I didn't find the cost per lead to be very efficient with that system. But when I first got in the business in 2016, what my real estate broker did is he taught us how to handle these leads that came in through Google, through Commissions Inc. And we would call those leads for 2 hours a day, trying to schedule appointments, work it out that way. So I really got to cut my teeth on those early leads when I first got into the business. My dogs are fighting over toys, and they have counsel of them. Atlas, that's enough. And so I learned really quickly how to have conversations with these prospective clients. Nowadays, a good portion of my business is repeat referral SOIs, people who are reaching out to me directly. But the structure of that initial phone call really hasn't changed. And I actually have done a few trainings on this in the past. I title it One Call Starts It All. After a late mentor of mine when I was in auto sales, which is what I did before real estate, which taught us that if you make a phone call and starting that initial dialogue with someone can really lead to a lot of success down the road. So the more phone calls you make, the more likely you're going to have success. If you were here last week, I always say you want to put yourself in the way for good things to happen. And the best way to put yourself in the way for good things to happen is to talk to people who are raising their hands, either looking at houses or looking to sell their houses, right? Even just there was a for sale by owner just last week in my neighborhood. I was walking the dogs around and I noticed the for sale sign. I took a photo of my dogs in front of that for sale sign. And I'm like, why haven't you called me yet? And I sent over my marketing plan. I have a listing appointment with her on Monday if her house doesn't sell over the weekend. So one call starts it all is kind of the training I have with that. But I base it has evolved over the years as well. I'm not a really big believer in scripts, but I believe if you haven't had many conversations with clients initially, you need to have some sort of strategy and layout behind it. There are a lot of different things you can find online. I will tell you, I searched probably about 2 weeks ago for different like calls and scripting on like YouTube and things like that. I was actually really disappointed in what I found. I didn't find very much good, useful information there. A lot of it's kind of outdated. There were somewhere that were showing like recordings of people's when they were on the phone, but I didn't feel like it was really a good way to really hone in on what it is that we're trying to accomplish with those initial calls. So I'm going to talk probably about buyers and sellers at the same time, right? So when you're talking to buyers, the 3 things that they are mostly concerned about is they're looking for selection, affordability, and convenience. They want to know that they're having all of the options of properties that are available to them. They want to know that they're going to be able to afford that property, whether that's down payment, purchase price, monthly payment, what sort of upfront costs it is that they're going to be able to pay for, when is their payments due, conversations like that. And then convenience. How do you actually schedule showings? How do you get into those things? How do you really know what you're getting into? One thing I talk to a lot of buyers and sellers about, like first when I talk to buyers, they don't teach you how to buy a house in school, right? It is a complex process and it can seem really overwhelming. And in my opinion, the online information just isn't a reliable source to really get you the information you need in order to make good decisions, right? And a lot of it's more salesy than anything. Sellers, they're looking for time, money, and convenience at the same time. So those are the same things that you're looking for. So you want to talk to those things that are issues to them. So a really great book that I love is called Gap Selling. I believe it's by a gentleman named Keenan. I tried to find it from my bookshelf here today. I couldn't find it, but really great book. What he talks about in that is you want to figure out someone's current state, and then from there, work it backwards to their ideal state. And then our job is to bridge the gap between the current state and the ideal state. And ironically, consumers, they know that they have a problem, but they don't know all of the details to that problem. We know the solutions to problems. We know a lot more about it because we are actively in the industry. Our job when we have this initial phone call is more to show them really how large that gap is, and then to show them that we have the solution to bridge that gap, right? So in this book, he talks about developing what's called a problem identification chart. I have this for buyers, for sellers, for new construction, and for relocation clients as well. So essentially what I did is I thought of all the different things that these clients are struggling with when they're getting ready to, I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully you can see this okay. Someone give me a thumbs up if you can see this okay. Yeah? You see this okay? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So this is what I developed and called it a problem identification chart. And essentially what it is it breaks down the problem as far as what they understand about that problem, the impact that problem is having on them, and then what I know about that problem. Okay. So a lot of buyers, even sellers, a lot of sellers, if they're a first-time seller, that's a big important thing too, but they don't understand the first steps that go in it. They're confused. There's a lot of conflicting information out there. It's not market specific. What I know about the problem is many people will focus on the wrong things first. For example, someone's like, I want to just go look at this house when they haven't obtained financing yet. They don't know what they have for the down payment. A lot of people don't understand the affordability. They're really not even sure what sort of price point they're looking in, if it fits in with their budget or what it is that they need to be looking at. When I talk to buyers, I will oftentimes explain you can get the same price on a $400,000 house as you do a $450,000 house. It's just going to depend on the taxes and the insurance and mortgage insurance and what you get for rates, right? It's all kind of getting mixed in those different things. But I know there's multiple different financing programs, low payment options. Common down payment in my area is 3 to 5%. A lot of first-time home buyers think they have to have 20% to buy a house. They're not even aware of some of these down payment programs that they can get. There's one program that I love in my territory where you can buy a house for $1,000 out of pocket. And I would say probably 40% of buyers will qualify for that program. And if you're a first-time home buyer and you think you can't buy a house because you don't have a down payment, so you're going to keep renting this to buy a house for $1,000 out of pocket, you cannot rent a property for $1,000 out of pocket. You'll have first month security deposit and rent's due next month. When you get a mortgage, oftentimes they will skip the month after on your payment, after you close, right? For a lot of people who are buying their first home, that's a huge change, right? But a lot of people don't understand down payment. They don't understand the financing. They don't even really know how to see houses, especially even with these rule changes. Now you got to have a written agreement before you go out there. Make sure you're not just signing a agreement with someone who I call as a Pop-Tart agent, someone who just goes out and show houses, right? I meet with my clients, and I spend about 60, 90 minutes with them going over everything before I will even get my car to go show them a house, right? But there are agents out there. If you're one of them, that's fine. But I do call them Pop-Tart agents. They show up at the house and they'll show it to you. I don't do that. My clients are loyal to working with me. They're on a long-term agreement, but there are agents out there I know that have signed clients on a year or 6-month contract just by meeting them one time and went over absolutely nothing, right? Now that client is now tied to working with that agent because they're in a contract with them, right? Then how do we work out selections? A lot of those online home search engines, they can be outdated. When people are looking on Zillow and Trulia, or websites like that, and then they reach out to me directly, I'll ask them, have you noticed some of those properties are sold by the time you call on them? And they're like, yes, we have noticed that. So what I'm showing them is that they might be missing out on properties, and then I have different resources and tools that they can actually use that is updated in real time so they're not going to miss out on it. Further, a lot of them, they don't know the paperwork involved. They don't know how to make an offer, the steps to watch out for, who represents who. I explained, the contracts are always changing. They're legally binding contracts. There's multiple questions that need to be answered when you do these things. It's not just, hey, I want to offer them $450 for this house, but what about earnest money, inspections, closing date? What about additional terms, financing? What are you putting for a down payment? A lot of consumers, when they're first getting into this, they don't really know what's going into it. So what my job is to point out the problem that they have here, the impact that that's having on them, and then showing them what I know about that problem. I call it the problem identification chart. And I got that from the book Gap Selling. And in that book, essentially we're just taking their current situation. We're showing that there's a lot more that they really don't know. And we're showing them what we know about that. And by showing them what we know about that, we're going to encourage them to meet with us in person. We're going to go over everything that covers all these things so that they can make good decisions, whether they're a buyer or a seller. Real quickly, before I dive into the actual structure of the phone call, I'm going to share my seller one quick, just because I'm sure some of you might have questions about that. Again, people are concerned about money, right? Even with my seller clients, a lot of them are focused on the wrong numbers, I feel, as well, before they meet me. Before they meet me, they might be like, I want to sell my house for $500,000. Okay, well, what is important to you about $500,000? What does that get you? What does that net you when you close? A lot of them don't even know, right? They're just like, even with buyers, a lot of the times they're like, I want to buy a house under $350,000. I'm like, how did you arrive at that number? Is that based off of a pre-approval? No, well, I just decided that was what I thought I could afford, right? Sellers are kind of the same way too, right? I explained to them that really the only number that I really want a seller to focus on is their estimate of proceeds, what they're going to take home at the closing table, right? Then it's going to be net sales price, and then it's going to be purchase price, because we can get a purchase price of $450 on a house, but if there's $15,000 in seller's contributions, we know that net sales price is $435, right? After commissions, taxes, state deed tax, all the different fees that are associated with real estate. After you pay off your mortgage, you're looking at making $70,000, or you're looking at making $140,000, right? That's what's important to you, right? And even that, we might be able to buy the next house with less than that, but that's a deeper thing. But a lot of people, they get really stressed over value. They don't want to undersell it. They won't want to list too high and lose on the buyer demand. Time is really important. How many of you have had the experience where you put a for sale sign in the yard and it doesn't sell in a day and your seller starts freaking out? Right? Literally, I put up for sale sign in the yard and the seller will be like, I don't know why it's not sold yet. I'm like, it's been listed for 2 hours. Right? Especially over the course of Q3 and Q4 of last year, when days on market were 60% of listings, according to NAR, and there's a lot of statistics that I see get thrown around out there. And if I don't actually see the data and the analytics behind it, I get a little wonky. I have a statistics degree, so I get a little wonky with that. But there was a statistic thrown around that said 60% of listings that were active on the market have been on the market longer than 60 days. That statistic started floating around in November. So having that conversation with sellers, this is why when I run into other agents out there and they're like, you list with me, you'll sell faster for more money than any other real estate agent out there. And I'm like, that is a really bold claim. You don't know what's going to happen, right? Yeah, like anything could happen in this. But the short answer on almost every question in real estate is it depends. Right? We'll see when we get out there and see what happens, right? But time, they don't want to sit around a long time. We show to them the exposure, pricing strategy, how we actually have conversations and negotiations with people, right? A lot of real estate agents they don't really negotiate every day. And you as a seller don't want to miss out on key details, right? A lot of real estate agents will go out there and say that they're a negotiation expert, and there's really not a lot backing that up, in my opinion. I've seen agents fresh out of real estate school say they're negotiation experts. I, what are you talking about? Like, what does that mean? Have you read books on it? Have you gone to trainings? Do you have accolades? Do you have awards? Like I've been in negotiate. Well, now it's been like 15 years. I got multiple awards, rookie of the year, my first year. I have multiple credentials in negotiations, and we show that to our clients. What does marketing actually mean, right? Does it just mean I put a for sale by owner yard house or sign in the yard? Post a few photos up on Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, that's marketing, but is the effective marketing, right? This is why when I do run into the for sale by owners, I'm like, you are missing out on so many opportunities right now. You're not anywhere, right? People are weak. And a really great tool if you're talking to sellers is look at the annual profile of buyers and sellers. You can get the highlights for free. And it breaks down how buyers are searching for homes, who your seller demographics are, all the things that were important to them in the sales strategy. You can find that online with a Google search. It's free. Okay. And I use that information and I share that to the sellers to explain to them, like, this is how people are finding houses. This is what we're going to be doing for you. This is what happens when you try to sell your house on your own. And then if you are going to hire a real estate agent to do it, whatever percentage it is you're paying, and it's a lot of money, you might as well hire someone who's actually going to do it the right way. Right. So I'm kind of getting a little off track here, but I call this problem identification chart, right? So I just list out the problem that they have, the impact that problem is having on them, and then what I know about the problem. So now I'm going to dive into kind of the nitty gritty of how initial phone call happens. When I do talk to someone, whether they reach out to me by message, by email, whatever, I tell them, hey, when would you have a time for a short 10-minute phone call to kind of cover everything? Once I know everything that's going into your situation, I can start pointing you in the right direction. You can make better decisions from there. All right. So then when I have the initial phone call, if you're prospecting a lead and you're just calling someone out of the blue, I call that riding the bull. The first 7 seconds are really critical to those initial phone calls. I'll call in. I'm like, hey, this is Alex Mayer. I'm with the Rochester Area Home Search. Are you looking to, I noticed you're looking at houses here in Rochester. Are you looking to do something in the next 3 to 6 months, or are you just browsing? Right? You just got to get that out of there, because there's this lizard brain knee-jerk reaction that online leads are going to have when you call them, where like they're just going to try to brush you off right away. A lot of people say, I'm just browsing. Perfect. That's exactly what that website's for. Tell me about your situation. Really, tell me about your situation is the thing I want to get to the quickest in every phone conversation that I have with a prospective client, whether they are a buyer or they are a seller, right? If someone comes on as a referral or an SOI, someone comes in on a referral. Hi, Isaiah. This is Alex Mayer. Lindsay told me to reach out to you here today. Why don't you tell me about your situation? I'll tell you I can help. And then so first 7 seconds, get over that first part, ask them to tell you about your situation. You will be surprised how much information people will give you if you just say, tell me about your situation, right? If they don't know really how to even give you that information, well, are you in a long-term lease right now? Or have you bought a house before? The questions that I'm asking people in these initial conversations are to get them to admit their ignorance in certain areas, right? If I'm talking to someone who's selling their house on their own, and I don't really chase FSBOs, but that one was in my neighborhood, and how dare they list their house without talking to me, right? So when I call that person, I'm like, have you sold your house before? Have you sold a house on your own before? No. Okay. All right. So now they're admitting to themselves, maybe I actually don't know everything that goes into this, right? First time home buyer, have you bought a house before? No. It hasn't happened in many years now, but I used to have clients who would be like, I'm looking to buy a foreclosure property. I'm like, okay, well, how many of those have you seen? Well, none. Yeah, me neither. They don't really exist anymore. And did you know that you're going to have a lot more money to put down in order to buy foreclosures and inspections and turning things on? Now they're admitting to themselves, oh, maybe I don't have this all figured out, right? It's like when I run into people, they're like, I'm waiting for the housing market to crash. I'm like, if the housing market crashes, no one's buying houses, buddy. I'm like, what makes you think that you're going to be able to buy a house if the market crashes? You don't got down payment today. Right. I don't know where you go. If the market crashes, it's bad for everybody. Continuing with that, tell me about your situation. My hope is that they're going to tell me if they're in a long-term lease. I want to know what they're paying a month in rent if they're renting. I want to know what their monthly mortgage payment is if they currently own a home. I want to know what it is that they don't like about their current home today. Right. Is it too small? Is it too big? Is it not close to work? Is it, I'm going through a separation right now and we need to get as much equity out of this as possible and get it closed quickly. Like, I need to know what their situation is, because once they tell me what it is that they're going through, I can pick up on knowing what their problems are, right? Now, when they tell me their problems, I can share what it is I know about it. So the initial 7 seconds, right in the bull, tell me about your situation for about 2 to 3, possibly 4 minutes. I'm going to let them ramble, right? I'll poke them a few times to know, what are you paying a month in rent? What are you paying on your mortgage? When do you need to be moved to this new place? When are you coming out here? All the different things that I can get them to. Have you talked to a bank already? Well, I'm looking to buy a house under 300,000. Then I'll let them keep going, and then I'll circle back to them like, where did you arrive at that 300,000 number? Did you talk to a bank already, or what's going on there? And I'm like, well, I haven't talked to a bank yet. Okay, perfect. Well, so you never purchased a house before. You think you're pre-approved, 300,000 is where you want to be. Can I make a suggestion? And I like using that word, can I make a suggestion? Because now I'm getting permission from them to share something, right? Well, based off of your situation, you're a first-time home buyer. You haven't saved up a lot of money right now. You're looking in that $300,000 price range. I'm going to recommend that you talk to this loan officer. They're going to be able to get you the best options available to you and explain to you what your options are. I'll explain the difference between a banker and a mortgage broker, and why it's more beneficial to them, in my opinion, for them to work with this mortgage broker, why I might recommend that they work with this lender over this lender because of their current situation. What I'm getting them to understand is that there's you can go multiple different avenues here, and if you don't know which avenue is the right one to take, it can cost you money, it can cost you time, and it can cost you the house, right? So I call them arrows in the quiver. Someone started throwing that around about 10 years ago when I first started, learning prospecting things. Like, when someone tells me something, I know that this is the tool I got to pull out to have that conversation with them. So oftentimes we'll talk about, where exactly it is that they're purchasing, the affordability, how are they actually looking at houses online, right? Have you been just searching online right now? Have you seen the inside of any houses? No, I've just been looking online. Okay, you might have noticed those third-party websites. They're large national geographical algorithms. They're not specific to our Rochester area. There's a very good chance that you're missing out on properties or looking at outdated information. And if you're using some of those websites, understand that there's some shady and malicious intent there. So you got to be careful. Atlas, that isn't that. And my big guy is yelling. He's my pops here. Atlas, he's yelling at my little one. So, continuing with this. So I get them to tell me their situation, and then as soon as they tell me their situation, now I start giving them suggestions. So my goal in that third phase is to really just change their perspective on a few different areas, right? Specifically about, if it's a buyer, those 3 core areas: selection, affordability, convenience, right? And then with sellers, time, money, and convenience as well, right? I want to make sure that I show them, how do we sell things quickly? What does it mean to be able to get you the most money for the sale of the home? What does negotiation actually mean? How do you separate and make this a business transaction and try to take the emotion out of it as much as possible? All right. So initial part, riding the bull, tell me about your situation. Now, what do I know about those things? As I'm talking in that, what do I know thing, I'm also saying things like, I'm going to put a pin in that subject right now because that's a more in-depth conversation. I'll cover that later, right? Or that's a little in the weeds right now, right? I don't want you to get super sidetracked and overwhelmed with those things. While at the same time, I do want them to feel that way, because I want them to feel like this guy can explain it to me, and I can, right? Well, as I'm going throughout that conversation, I will come back and I will circle back to some of those and answer some of those questions. So what I'm doing is I'm setting the expectation that I'm going to explain something, and then I'm delivering on it, right? I'm actually giving what it is. So what it's showing them is I'm competent, I'm reliable, and I actually do what I say, right? People feel much more comfortable when you show them examples of you actually doing what it is you want to do. By the end of it, if it's a buyer, for example, I would say, okay, based off of everything we talked about here today, I think it's a good idea for us to get together. As a first-time home buyer, second-time home buyer, I like to go over everything up front so that you know what it is that you're getting into so you can make good decisions, right? I'm going to cover the different types of financing that's available to you, not just so you know what you qualify for, but you understand what the competition qualifies for, because you are more likely to be competing with other buyers than you are to be competing with a seller. I'm not a loan officer, but I'm going to be giving you kind of the meat and potatoes of it, and then let the loan officer explain the numbers. Okay. Then what makes up a mortgage payment, especially for first-time home buyers? Taxes, mortgage insurance, homeowners insurance. How do these things, the escrow accounts, how do those things affect what your monthly obligation is going to be? Then how do we actually shop for homes online? Because again, some of those websites are outdated. I want to make sure you look in the right areas. I also want to make sure that we're careful what we say when we're at properties, because they're recording devices nearly everywhere. Right? I'd rather you show up late to a showing than show up early. If you show up late early, you might run into the seller. It can be kind of awkward. Right? I want to make sure you understand what we're expecting when we go there, how to make a good competitive offer, because again, you are more likely to be competing with other buyers. And I want you to know what goes into those things so that when we actually find the house, you're like, we're just having a 5-minute conversation, right? We're not just find a house and now we're having all these things like earnest money and inspections and inspection fees and appraisal fees and all those things up. I want you to know now, so that when we get there, it's much easier. You're prepared for it. Then what to expect once you do get an accepted offer to closing: inspections, earnest money, appraisals, title work, financing, walkthrough. So everything that goes into that. What usually works better for you, afternoons or evenings, right? If it's on a weekend, I usually try to do my meetings in the morning. I got one buyer appointment at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and I got a listing appointment today at 4:30. So I mean, like, I try to shoot afternoons and evenings, but weekends I do in the mornings because I just want to get done. But I give them two options: afternoons or evenings, right? I want them to choose one, right? Evenings usually work better for me. Okay. And by this point, I should know if it's just them or if there's somebody else involved, a spouse, a significant other, whatever. Is this possible that this person is going to be there as well? Perfect. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and meet at this location at this time and I'll cover everything it is I just talked about. You're going to know what to expect, how to operate, everything it is that you need to do in order to be successful as a home buyer in this area. Or if it's a seller, based off of our conversation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out there and I'm going to give you a good opinion of value on your home. I tell my seller clients that selling is a series of questions. The first question I get is, was my home worth? Number 2 is, what do I need to do and fix up what's worth repairing? Number 3 is, how do I address and stage my home? Number 4 is, how do I prepare for showings? Number 5 is, how do I experience showings? And then number 6 is, what do we do when we get an offer? Number 7 is, what do we expect contract to close? I'm going to cover all of these things with you, and you're going to know exactly what goes in it, and you're going to feel much better in both situations, buyer or seller. You're going to feel much more better about the situation and feel much more in control. All right? Perfect. All right, I'll see you at this time. I do end the call with them. I actually send out long text messages to my clients after the fact, just like, hey, thank you for the short chat. They're very, very long. Dog is young, so they're very long. This kind of breaks down, but hey, thank you for the short chat. Where we're going to be meeting. I'll cover everything you need to know. I'm going to have this lender reach out to you. Other than that, I'm going to share 2 different links with you. I share my about page, and then I also share my reviews, which are going to show that I have like 258 5-star reviews in the city of Rochester. I tell people I share that for 2 reasons. 1, I want you to know that I'm credible. And 2, I want you to know that I'm also big on the client service side, right? So you know that I'm delivering there. I got about 2 minutes left here, so I'm going to open up the questions if anyone's got anything for me.
Wow. Excellent. I like it. Very nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions, anyone? She's stating that is what I deal with every day, is stuff screaming at me.
Yeah.
He's a demon.
Did you say the chart is in the book? Is in the chart that you were sharing with us? It's in the gap selling book, or can you share that chart with us?
The chart I developed is based off of the concepts from gap selling.
Okay.
I think his name, I think it's Jim Keenan, if I remember correctly. It's something like that. Keenan is the last name. I know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I would say create your own problem identification charts too. Like, you got it. You know specifically what goes on in your area. If you use mine and you don't do the work to really develop it yourself, it's not internalized, right?
That's nice. Yeah.
So just list out their problem, the impact it's having on them, and what you know about that problem.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Very nice info. Very nice. Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll call it for this week. Then next week, I'm going to be covering how to set proper expectations and boundaries with clients, so that they're not becoming. You will have a few problem clients over time, but so that you have less likely of running into problems like that, so that they know what to expect in working with you, and so they're going to ultimately have a good experience overall. Because then we set the game that we want to play. We set the board. And we deliver on the game that we want to play. We're not trying to play catch up the whole time. So setting proper expectations and boundaries is a critical part to how I run my business. And in my opinion, it's the reason why I have over 255 star reviews.
Yes.
Right? They know what to expect in working with me. I deliver on it. We all have a good time.
Very nice.
All right. See y'all next week.
See you. Thank you so much.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.